Hi, Rachel. I'm so excited to chat with you today. And I feel like I should preface this. Rachel and I work together, and we have for a year and a half, almost, no, 2 years. It's been 2 years in July.
Mhm.
Yeah, 2 years in July. And so as we get into this, I was just saying, like, I already am so excited to know more about how everything started for you. And I'm excited to have this little conversation.
Sounds great. I can't wait. I'm so excited to be here.
Better introduction for you. Would you like to tell the people who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Rachel Side. I'm a Squarespace web designer. I build personality packed websites on Squarespace for any number of different people or businesses or organizations. I work with everyone across the board. Like I'm industry agnostic, I like to say. So I really just help anyone who either has or wants a Squarespace website and is ready to show their actual personality on that website. That's my jam.
Amazing. So I'm going back to, I don't know, because I think you've listened to my podcast, so you might know that I asked this question. I'm going back to a question I asked for a really long time as the kickoff question is, what does sustainability in business mean to you?
Hmm. I think that in order for me personally, like I need my business, I am the business, so I don't have a team. And if that's going to remain sustainable, like I need to be able to manage what comes up and sort of like be flexible and adaptable to be able to meet whatever challenges come my way and also like have the ability to say no when the time's not right for things that are too big. I get a lot of shiny object syndrome in my business. I get excited and then chase an idea that like someone else said to me. And then in reality, like that's not that's not sustainable because that's not how you grow. You gotta stay focused on what you're trying to do. And so I think for me, sustainability is really about that adaptability and flexibility.
I like that.
Yeah. That's how I sustain this business for the long haul is maintaining those things first and foremost.
Adaptability and flexibility.
Mhm.
I like it. So let's rewind. I don't know. This is where I'm like, I'm excited to talk about this. I have no idea. How did you get started in your business? Like, what brought you into Squarespace web design?
Yeah, I mean, what a story. Okay, so I'm trained as a web designer. Um, that's really how this happened. So
Like, you went to college for it
I
or
went,
university, whatever you would say.
oh, we should go back even further then. No, I did not train for it. I did a certification in when I was working like full time. So let me go back to the beginning. I went to college. I majored in religion, and so I learned how people think and how they process information and how their culture affects that and how the way that they were raised and the place that they were raised and the like really like broad structure of the society in which they were raised helps them process and think through information and decisions that they make moving
Uh-huh.
forward, right? So that was like a big thing that I was studying a lot about. Then I graduated in 2012. I could not get a job anywhere, and I saw what I'm learning is like the beginnings of my inability to be hired by other people. I am too driven. I am too much of a go-getter. I'm too loud. I'm too passionate. I cannot settle for like mediocrity or people like not like keeping up with me. Like I just repeatedly am noticing that I have noticed this pattern, which is really what led me to start a business in the first place. But I was hired, I was working full time for a small nonprofit. And then I actually then took like a lateral move working at a different nonprofit doing very similar work. And then while I was there, I sort of like discovered digital marketing. I was hosting events. I was in charge of hosting and then marketing the events. And in doing that, I was like, what's going on that like there's this huge disconnect between the people that I'm meeting like in my own life and the people who are attending my work events. And in in trying to solve that problem, being like, what's attracting the wrong type of people, um, I learned about like brands. I learned about brands and digital marketing and how like I just started paying attention, like Nike and Lululemon were attracting all these cool people that I was meeting out in my personal life. And then like the events that I was putting together that looked, I now see like fuddy-duddy, were attracting like a different audience. And the audience was completely incorrect. Because in case you're wondering, so this was an organization that hosts events for people in their 20s and 30s in Philadelphia. And so we used to get weekly phone calls from like parents and grandparents of people who were in their 20s and 30s being like, I need you to recruit my son. I need you to recruit my grandson. And I was like, something's not working. Cause like if your grandson, first of all, like it doesn't matter how cool I am, like your grandson is not coming to my event because you told him to come. So like we can't win. But anyway, I basically started doing a whole bunch of research. And then ultimately, the organization listened to my complaints and decided to launch a strategic plan process that included a rebrand and a website redesign. And I was like I basically had an apprenticeship with the consulting firm that they hired. So I was like, I had my hands in the pot of like actually designing the brand, actually designing the assets of the website, putting all the pieces together, doing the market research, doing all the focus group testing. Like I just did all of that. So that was really cool. And then at the same time, I was also getting a web design certification through UArts, which is now closed, but was a school in Philadelphia that had like a
I
web
didn't
design
I
program.
didn't know University of the Arts closed.
They just closed.
Oh, they have a great musical theater program.
Yeah, they had a lot of cool
Mm.
stuff. It was like a real
Yeah.
loss for the arts, but they had a big win also. We'll talk about it later, but basically this like very cool company that's repurposing old buildings for
Oh,
artists and makers. They were able to get access to one of the old UArts buildings. So they're going to turn it into this like makers studio space that's like a second version of a space that they already have in Philly that's super popular. So I'm excited for what's to come, but yeah, bummer about UArts. But anyway, I was taking class at UR. And then I also, because I was still working full time and I'm a real go getter, as you can tell, I did an internship with a solopreneur who I knew, a mentor of mine who ran her own marketing firm. And so I was basically like learning from her about marketing strategy and digital marketing strategy, specifically about events. And then I basically, once that whole website for the new organization, the organization launched a new website, a new brand, and I stayed on for a year to like execute their marketing strategy. And basically after all of that time, I was like, all right, well, I can't learn anymore here. I've done the best I can do. And so that's when I started my own business. And I had a Squarespace client sort of like on the side that like for much of the happened to like meet someone out in the world. She needed some help. We like, we hit it off. I was working for her sort of managing a blog. And then when I left my job, started my business, she was my first anchor client. And I just took on a whole bunch of other work. When I first started the business, I was like, I will take any digital marketing project, anything at all. And then over the years, I've honed that. For the first 2 years, I sort of did any digital marketing. And then I was like, all right, no, wait, Squarespace is the thing I'm best at, the thing I can make the most money at, and the thing I'm fastest at. So I pivoted into Squarespace. And yeah, I've been doing it ever since.
that's a cool background story.
Who knew?
But what happened with did the events wind up becoming well attended?
Yes, I forgot to tell you the most exciting part, which is that after we launched the new brand, I never heard from a mother or grandmother ever again on the phone. Ever again. We went from having like one a week, one phone call a week from like the wrong audience member to having 0 phone calls a week and a complete 180 and who was showing up to our events. Like it was not the same people that I was meeting out, but it was like this people who would have gotten along. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was like we did it right. So
Yeah.
it was really exciting.
I actually want to talk about that. Do you watch Mad Men? Or have
No,
you ever watched Mad Men?
no.
There's so Elizabeth Moss has a character on there named Peggy, and her family's very Catholic, and she gets recruited into, like, they're gonna do this CYO dance, which is, I should know this, Catholic Youth Organization, I think,
Mhm.
dance, and she, like, brings the flyers and presents it like they're any client that Sterling Cooper would have, very fancy, and the old women on the council are like, "It's a little fresh, like, you need to keep a little room for the Holy Spirit on that flyer with the 2 people dancing," and she's like, "This is the only way you're gonna get your target market to show up, guys." And they were like, we think we need to revisit this." And that's what your story reminded me of, was that delightful moment in Mad Men where she was like, "If you want these people, this is not who you're attracting."
Yes, 100%. It was exactly that same thing. Um, it was the same. Like we were using like 20-year-old marketing strategies,
Yeah.
and it wasn't connecting. It was connecting with the people who were in their 50s and 60s, which is about right.
So I'm curious, so, like, what did you realize? I mean, obviously you realized because you were having the wrong people call you, but
Yeah.
to get it to turn around, and, like, I'm also curious just because having, like, a religion, but sort of sounds like sociology or some type of anthropology, like, sorta snuggled in there somewhere. Like, did that affect how you knew what to do with this? Like, not actually having a marketing background or not having a background in marketing?
I think I've always been really aware of how people think, and how how cultures are shaped. And also, like, a big piece of the story that I didn't mention is that this was a Jewish organization, so we're hosting events for Jewish people in their 20s and 30s, which was, at the time, I was the peer group that we were attracting, right? And I had like a lifetime of experience working and volunteering in the Jewish community in the event space, and like doing some communications work related to that. So like I didn't have a marketing background, but I knew enough about how my peer group communicated that I knew that what we were doing was outdated. And a lot of the things that would happen was like a board member at the organization would be like, "Well, you have to make a postcard because that's what we always did. We always printed a postcard with all the upcoming events on it and we handed out at the event." And I was like, "It's 2014. Like, even then, that was almost 10 years ago. Even
Yeah.
then, like, no one's looking at postcards anymore." Like, I was like, "We actually need to have a visual brand that competes with the e-commerce companies that our constituents are expecting." Like, they're expecting the level of like Starbucks mobile ordering when they look at something on the internet, and we're presenting to them like a fuddy-duddy postcard from 1998 when you were involved in this organization. And it was just like for me, I just continuously noticed this disconnect where I was like, that's not how me and my peers, like, that's just not how we communicate anymore. But the people were saying we had to do it, like other people were saying you had to do it this way. And it wasn't, eventually I like sort of got my wits about me and was like, this is actually not working. Um, and here's why. And I was mostly, the thing that I was able to pull together was that comparison like really got them when I was like, these people are expecting like what they see on Lululemon's website. And we're showing them like this thing that's not mobile responsive and is like really lame and has like not a single picture of a human being. It's just like little icons. Um, it was like not like, of course this isn't working. Like, look how many words are here. There's no visual communication happening. So I think that like my 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 like what I learned in college taught me how people communicate and how to better express the idea that you're trying to express. But I don't know, it's like it is like the underlying thing is that like society is shaped by religion. Even Americans, like American society is shaped
Yeah.
by religion. So like for me to be able to like I was better able to communicate to the board members at this organization because I had this background that taught me how to communicate to them. But I also am Jewish and they're Jewish. And I understood that the history and cultural, like the history of the Jewish people in North America in the last like 40 years. Like I was able to see what's going on in a way that like I was very tapped into like what like the professional Jewish community was discussing. So I just like all these things were happening sort of at the same time. It was like a perfect storm of me getting the knowledge that I needed and the like tools to communicate it to the right
Yeah.
people.
You had to zhuzh it a little bit.
Had to do it. You
Yeah.
gotta make it, you gotta like, I had to figure out how to explain it to them. And I was very lucky to have a couple of like great mentors. Like the woman who I interned with is like closer to my age. She was obviously more experienced than me, a little bit older than me, but like she was even more equipped to be able to sort of speak to the older audience and explain to them what was happening, especially because she runs a marketing firm. So like she knew
Yeah.
what was like, she pretty quickly was like, this is the problem that this organization. um,
Yeah.
so anyway, that was how, I mean, I was very lucky to have some great mentors. Also, one of my colleagues at the organization was on board right from the start. Also, she had a little more experience than me, was a little older than me, was like everything like sort of like it really was like all the stars aligned and it worked out. I think if I was anywhere else, that would not have happened.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to find like a better way to define things or to make it easier to communicate what it is. And like with marketing and selling, right? Like I've never taken a marketing class. I've never had a marketing internship. I've never done anything like that. And I think the way that I would currently define it, and I think this makes sense from what you're saying, is that selling at its core is being able to understand what someone wants, and marketing is how to put feeling behind it.
Yes. And I think that I I am even now, again, like almost 10 years after that experience, I am still learning how to do those things like in a business sense, if that makes sense. I think I've always been a natural. Like I was pitching these events before we did all this digital marketing work or while it was in progress. It took like 2 years. Like as it was all coming together, I was still promoting and pitching these events. And I've always been, you know, they hired me because I have a bubbly personality. They were like, you little lady, you deserve to be running these events. But what I think people have always missed when they see the bubbly personality is that like what's actually happening is like I'm a great saleswoman. I've just never put actual tactics behind it until,
Mhm.
10 years later in my career. Now I'm running a business. I have to put tactics behind it. But at the time I was saying like, oh, you're looking for a cool, group of young women who are like smart and with it. Well, they're all at my events. Why don't you like, they're all my friends. They're all there. Why don't you come check it out? It was like how I was able to get people in the door. Um,
Yeah.
but like that worked really well. The website was doing nothing for us or inviting them to the Facebook event. Like the Facebook events they looked archaic. Like they had no business being on Facebook. They were so old school.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That okay, so I want to transition from um this into like you actually selling your own website packages
Yeah.
because I know where you are now.
Yeah.
And can I say you just closed your largest package of your life? Can we say
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. We can say that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Where did you start? Like, can we talk about the general evolution from
Oh,
where you
yeah.
started to like where you're at now? Because I know your packages have changed drastically
Oh my
just
God.
in the
Yes.
last couple of years.
Yes. When I first started out, I went to like build someone a new website and I was like, all right, yeah, like how about $800? I'll like build you this website. And, to be fair, they were getting $800 worth of work. Like it looked really pretty, but it didn't function properly. It didn't do what they needed. It like sort of did what they needed, like good enough, but I couldn't solve this one problem. And I had to like ask my friend who's a developer to help me out. And then oh my gosh, I was ended up like spending all this time dealing with him because he was wanted it to be perfect. He's a developer, so his brain works differently than mine. Um, Not that I don't want my work to be perfect, but I'm not. Whatever. If you're the difference between a designer and a developer, that's a different
Developer is
story.
a different thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, yeah. I mean, I was I don't even remember my like first Squarespace package. My first Squarespace package happened after I was like just doing whatever anyone wanted for so long. Um, eventually I was like, okay, I think I'm going to pivoted to the 2-week model where you build a Squarespace website in 2 weeks. Um, I charged $1,800 for that. Again, that was like on my
That's a
first,
big jump
well,
from the
those,
original.
the 800 was the original. Yeah. And then like over a year or two, it evolved a little bit more. Actually, I'll tell you what happened is I had like a business friend who I was working, I rented their office space, and he ran at the time a bigger web design firm than what I was doing. Still a small shop, but he had a team. And um they got a client come in for an $8,700 website. And he was like, this is too small for my team. But he's like, I teed it up for you. Like, it's ready. He's like, I'm going to tell them this is not for me, but like, I have someone who can do the website for you. She's like, happy with this. 8,700 is great. Like, he's like, I did all the hard part. You just like go in there and sell them. And I was like, oh, great. So obviously home run. So when I that was like the end. That was my last that's my last WordPress website, let's say. And I didn't pitch it. I didn't pitch it myself. Someone else pitched it to me. Yeah, and that $800 website that I was just talking about was also WordPress. So I was doing WordPress. I was working in any platform. Like I was doing WordPress websites. I was doing Wix. I had like a client on Weebly. I had this anchor client on Squarespace. And I was also doing email marketing. So I was doing MailChimp for one client and Constant Contact for another. And I was doing all the different builders within WordPress. Like I really liked Divi, but like someone else had a different one. So I
The
was using
best.
whatever. Yeah, Divi's the
Mhm.
best, but that's a conversation for another day. So basically what I was like, this was when I first started. Everything was all over the place. I had no systems and I spent so much time like flipping my brain around to be like, okay, wait a minute. Like in Divi, the anchor links are controlled in this spot, but in Squarespace, you have to write the code for the anchor links in this spot. And what's the CSS code again for the anchor link? Like it was just like such a whole, took so much time out of me that I eventually was like, okay, something's wrong. Like I replaced my income, which was great, but I was like, okay, but wait, I need to be like more streamlined. So at a certain point, I basically was like, all right, WordPress is fine, but I don't really like it that much. Squarespace, I am fast. I'm really good at it. And I've been practicing for like 3 years with this anchor client. And so I was like, all right, I think I'm gonna like hone in on Squarespace. So I did a special program that like taught me how to do that 2-week website on Squarespace. And that's when I started pitching it at $1,800 for a website. And
Mhm.
then pretty quickly, 1,800 became 3,600 for a 2-week website. I stayed at 3,600 for like maybe a year or two. Um, and in fact, actually, it never even occurred to me to charge more than 3,600 until we had a kid. And I was like, oh, wow. All right. Well, first of all, I don't have 2 weeks anymore. That's not how that's going to look. And also, like, 3,600 for like 2 projects in a month is no longer covering the expenses that my family requires of me. And so that's when I was like, okay, how do we sort of reassess, shift, update, pivot? And that's how I like tripled my rates overnight and I have basically been like scrambling to keep up ever since then.
That's that's
Nothing,
around when I met you.
yeah, exactly. And nothing breaks the business quite like tripling your rates overnight. Because then I had to obviously the product, I hadn't changed my rate in so long, but the product was still the same thing and was like that properly valued, now properly valued at triple the rate.
Yeah.
But like my acquisition processes were a mess. My marketing system is a mess. My everything else was built for this like smaller engine basically. And so I've been spending a lot of time sort of updating all of those things to match
Yeah.
where I'm headed.
I remember
It's
when we looked at it, we don't have to go too far down this rabbit hole because it's not really why we're here, but, like, I remember when we looked at it and it was like, you're getting paid almost nothing per hour when you also factor in all the acquisition work you're doing and all the time that you're, like, just generally not getting paid to be in your business, to be posting on Instagram and LinkedIn and do all these copy chats, which is very much a part of your specific acquisition process. And, like,
exactly.
at some point, if you were anybody, if you were any other business, like if you go buy a bar of Dial soap, you are paying for their janitor and you're paying for their accountant and you're paying for all of the things. Like as a business owner, at some
Yes,
point, your clients, not in the beginning, like everyone has to start somewhere, but at some point, you got to figure out where it's all getting made up in the wash.
exactly. Yeah. And that was one of the biggest things I learned from you for sure was just not like when you say it that way, it makes so much sense. Like, duh. But I had never thought of it like that. Like I was pricing the business based on the hourly rate, an hourly rate based on an estimate of how much time I thought it would take me to build the website at the time that I was pitching it.
Which makes sense.
Totally. But I mean, you have to start somewhere, right? But, and I had, to be fair, this $3,600 package had a whole bunch of add ons. So, like, if you needed a logo or you needed a new visual identity or you needed copywriting help, like, each of those things was an add on to that. So, it wasn't like every project was just $3,600. Sometimes they were a little higher, but I was still, you know, I was also still so new in my business that like projects could take me anywhere from like it was like 60 to 90 hours. And yeah, exactly.
3,600 bucks.
For $3,600. So
Oh
like,
God.
but I wasn't tracking that information, or I was using my time really inefficiently, or um like I was like not fast enough at code. So I would get myself into a code problem and then like have to solve it. It would take me a while to solve it. And there were just like a lot of things like that that I've at this point, first of all, I've just become much faster and better and just a stronger coder than I was before. But also I've set the business up to be more streamlined so that I don't have to like reinvent the wheel every time. Like I have like a code bank, for example, that I now refer to when I need a specific item of code, as opposed to like I used to have to either build it myself, research how to build it, figure it out. Then I would store it in the client's website. So if I ever needed it again, like let's hope and pray to God that client's website is still there and I'm still an admin, like I would have to like go back in and get the code. Like it was like just a mess.
Now AI can do it for you.
And now AI can just do it for me, which is a whole
Yeah.
different world. So yeah, I think all of those, I mean, I don't even remember. That was the evolution, was basically just me being like, okay, what are my, really, it comes back to the question you asked me about sustainability. Like everything has always been, well, how do I adapt to the needs, my current needs at the moment? And how
Yeah.
do I make this business fit my current needs? And like each time I pivot or upgrade or change something major in the business, it's because something in my life, some bigger why has required that of me.
Yeah. When you've also learned that like your business has, I mean, this is just my observation, just because I have known you for a while, like your business has cycles. And I think that's true for anyone. If you start to look at it, there are always cycles. And, like you went, tell me if you don't want this aired, but like you had a stretch where it was like, oh my God, there's nothing coming in. And then you were like booked out for like the rest of the year after that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, you understand that it's why I'm so adamant that like, if I'm going to do any kind of consulting work, I'm like, you have to come in for a year, because we just don't even know what's going to start to happen until we get to the end of the first year. And that's when things, in my opinion, that's when things get good. But anyway, just as a, just as sort of my own 2 cents on that. I
Yeah, I mean,
would,
I think it's totally accurate. Also, something I will tell you is that um I had always had that anchor client until I started working with you. That was the beginning. So in some senses, like this, I'm in like right now what I would consider the third phase of my business. I've never not had an anchor client. So that's that, like the feast and famine cycle you're specifically talking about was despite being an entrepreneur for like 7 years, just at like, 6 months ago or whatever was my first feast or famine cycle, like a true feast or famine cycle, because I had always had just like a little something from this anchor client that I could rely on. But I could also never grow I could never grow
Mhm.
to where I am now with saving time for the anchor client, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So like it
Yeah.
was a risk, but a calculated risk that worked out.
Yeah. Those are I mean, I think those moments are like the scariest, but where the biggest, maybe not always right away, but like the biggest breakthroughs wind up happening, or like the sweetest moments wind up happening, because usually when you start feeling like, I think it's time, it's usually time. It's usually past time.
Mhm.
by the time you really start. So anyway, 2
Yes.
cents. I would be curious, like, and then we'll make this the end of this little segment, and then we'll transition into like talking about your process, which I love and I have probably talked about on this podcast before because I think it's a cute name anyway. And which would be how, like, looking back at when you were selling $1,800 websites, $3,600 2-week websites, that compared to now having like 8,000, 10,000, five-figure plus packages that you've now sold. Like, what do you think your biggest evolution in the way that you show up to sell those packages has been?
Oh my gosh. It's a great question. Um, I've completely changed how I sell those packages. Um,
You have to, I mean, there's completely different people who are going to buy them. So you,
Completely
this
different
some
people.
sense, have to.
Yeah, and so I also like I wanna mention that like I have a whole bunch of packages that I offer, right? Like one of them is what you're discussing. Like it's like a
Yeah.
$10,000 package, but that's not right for everyone. So like sometimes I am still pitching $3,600 websites, but those websites look very different from the websites that I was pitching like before. Also I've changed the way that looks. The $3,600 website now takes only 1 week, not 2 weeks. And there's a bunch of stipulations that like has to be met in advance in order for you to qualify for it and whatever. There's a whole bunch of like, and there's still the add-ons. So like things are still happening. At For some clients, that's right. So basically basically the biggest thing that has changed is that I am, I have like, uh, I have like a suite of tools that I'm pulling from, and I don't always know when the conversation starts, like which of these tools we're going to need when I start selling. Like
Mm.
sometimes I'm talking to people and I think it's going to be, oh, that's not true. Typically, I guess I do know because I have a strong inquiry form. So when people come in, when they book a call with me, I have enough background information to know if like they're expecting a $3,600 project or if they're expecting a $10,000 project, or if they like really don't know, but they're at a position where they're ready to invest in their marketing. They just don't know what that is going to cost. And they sort of like, sometimes there are people who've already worked with me. So they sort of just trust me to pitch them what they need. So yeah, the biggest change, the number one biggest change is that I now have this like visual presentation that I give on all of my sales calls, that I never did before. And I have I look now like I'm worth that $10,000. Whereas before, when I was doing these $3,600, I had a $3,600 like experience all around. It was just a phone call. It was a quick little thing. I had an agenda, but it was mostly just a conversation. It was very casual. I didn't tell them I had an agenda. Like I was just like, I was just like do 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 like at the end of the call, I had like a soft close, and typically it worked because of who I was talking to, and I was always just talking to like someone's mother-in-law. Like it was like, it was like always like a connection that worked. And now I'm pitching like I am pitching my services, and I come and I'm prepared and I organize and I say to them like right in the first minute, I'm like, well, I have a little agenda, so I'm going to steer this conversation. And like, I tell them who's boss right away. I show them my
Love it.
present. Yeah, I show them my presentation when I get to the, and basically the whole way along, I'm like, they're asking questions. I'm affirming that I've worked on this project before. They're asking me more questions. I'm saying, oh my gosh, you're sounding like every client I've ever had. Like these are all things that I can totally do for you. And then I say, are you ready to like discuss the process? And I show them my little process. We talk about my 4P design method. So I'm sure we'll get to the 4Ps. But then like once I show them all of that, they're like, oh wow, that's amazing. I guess I see now why it's so much more expensive than everyone else I'm talking to. Who's like, they're
Yeah.
Hawaii. That's what they always say to me. I had two of those this week who were like, why are you twice the price of the other people I was talking to? And I was like, well, those people don't know what they're doing.
Grab your popcorn. I'm about to show you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, get ready for this presentation. So yeah, and I think I'm like, I've upgraded my systems just in general, not just with the presentation, but then like, for example, if it's a $3,600 level package, like I'm going to try and close that on the call, the first call. If it's a bigger package that it seems like they're interested in, I'm going to have a proposal call that's separate from like this initial sales call. On the proposal call, that's when I come with a very customized, like the presentation looks similar, but has like customized options for their needs, has a whole bunch of different, like basically possible add-ons and combinations. I would introduce the team that may or may not be getting pulled into the project. I'm showing examples of past work that team may has done before or that we've done together. I'm showing them like, I'm putting together more of like an aid to like have the closing conversation. And it just is so much higher level. Like I typically personalize it also. Like there's one slide on my process that's about like how you get to sit back and relax because then I just do all the work. And for the generic version, it's just like a picture of a laptop. And then it's like, oh, you sit back and relax. I'm just going to get to work. But after that initial call, I've gotten to know them enough to know like what they want to do to relax. And so like, I just made one for someone. He told me he loves sailing. So I like have a video of someone like kicking their feet up on a boat. And that's like specifically for him. And another client of mine posts a lot about rest on her or whatever on Instagram. And so I like pulled a picture from their feed and popped it into the thing. So like I basically am able to work these pieces of my personality that are natural assets of mine into this system that now then tells people like, oh wow, I see now why she's worth so like I see why a project with this person is going to be more expensive than a project with like my neighbor's daughter down the street.
Yeah.
It's like just getting into web design.
Yes. Well, I mean, the big takeaways that I heard, which I didn't know all that, and I think this is going to be a good transition into like what is your process, because I'm assuming that's what is in like the visual presentation is about your process. And do you talk about your foralities?
I actually do not talk about the
Oh, you
formalities on
don't.
the calls. Yeah.
No.
I learned that there's not enough time because it's like well, we could talk a little bit about it. The foralities exist. They are my framework for building a website, which I'm sure we can get into in a minute. But the reason they work really well is that they attract people who would want to have the like process conversation with me for how I do it. I find that I have been testing. I made a video and I embedded it on my inquiry form, and that video walks through the foralities, but like no one watches it. And no one's like talking to me about it and no one's
Mm.
mentioning it to me. But when I share about the foralities, the like people that I'm talking to are super jazzed about it and like think it's really cute and really connect with it. But I find that prospects, like they don't care. Like when they're at the point where they're ready to book a call with me, they're not looking at that video. They don't care. So probably that needs a tweak if I'm like assessing what's working in the business. But really the foralities are great for like conversations like this where I know that like it's really generic and works for anyone. Like using the foralities to make a great website works for anyone, but how I specifically do it would be catered to each unique use case for who I'm building it for. Does that make sense?
Interesting. So you do the 4 Ps on the initial call or the proposal call or both?
On the initial call and
Mm.
and on the proposal call. I like reiterate it on the proposal call.
My 2 cents, I'd be very interested to see how the foralities would work specifically in the proposal call as more of
Oh,
like
instead of
the
the
star of the
P.
show of like, this is my framework, but then also like this is what it would specifically look like for you because it's always custom tailored to the client. So like this is John's foralities
Oh, yeah.
because
That's a really good idea.
so that's the because when we talked about framework initially, I did not have a framework. I like have a framework for frameworks now.
Yeah.
And so your process framework is what I call your transformation framework, but the foralities is what I call your conversion framework. And that's the thing that gets people to understand like what they're actually paying for, not just how quickly and the timeline for what's going to look like to get there. So it's like the thing that makes them go, "Oh my God, I want this." And you are clearly the only person on earth who can do it this way and give me what I want, and I want this.
That
That's the
is,
conversion framework.
you are so wise, because that's exactly what I'm doing on my calls. I'm just doing it with the 4 Ps. So basically, I like, on the initial call, I just give them the generic version. And I always mention, like, when I'm talking to them, especially if I know it's going to be like a smaller, like one of these $3,600 packages, the the proposal, that not the proposal, the slideshow that I'm showing them is for like my like $8,500 package. So it obviously goes into like a lot more detail in the, like, the small print is
Mm.
basically like, I was like, so this is for like a full custom site and not really what you need, but like for the sake of this exercise, I'm just going to use these same slides to show you. I always use a line like that. But on the conversion call, I would then like take the 4 Ps and specify what's needed for their specific thing. So I
The
changed the small print for the
the 4
proposal call.
alities
And
of,
I
like,
think I need
this
to do the foralities instead.
yeah, of, like, this is what visuality would be for you. This is what propositionality, I'm gonna see if I can remember all 4 of them, would be. You'd basically just go through and show them, like, this is what it means, this is what it would mean for you specifically.
Yeah.
And they
And
go,
and
"Oh my
that would
god, I want that, Rachel, you're brilliant."
that would also be really smart, because it would allow me to like pull not like a full mood board, but like some inspiration based on what they've told me, if it's relevant for this client. And
Yeah.
it would help them see the difference, because a lot of the times their questions are like, well, like so and so made me these like little icons. Realize like, you think do we need to ditch them? Like sometimes people don't understand like what the rebrand, for example, like for what a rebrand might, like why would I do that? Um, that would just give me a little bit more space to be like, this is
Mhm.
the vision I have for you.
To bring it full circle, it's the zhuzh.
The zhuzh. It's the zhuzh.
Yeah.
That's
It's
a great idea. Wow. Put that in I put it on the list.
put it on the list. I do wanna talk about, like, what are the 4 alities, but I also want to highlight for anyone who's listening, it's and is like, "Okay, but how is this relevant to me?" If you're not picking up what we're putting down on this, like, without getting into my systems, because I love a framework, and I think frameworks are probably the most important thing you can ever develop for your business. If you want especially if you wanna sell, like, real high ticket, it shows very clearly you are an expert, but beyond that, like, you did something that I didn't know you were doing, and that is the whole visual presentation. Like, number one, when you can connect visuality, when you can connect visuals to your sales process, because people process imagery like 60,000 times faster than they do words. So
Mm,
when you can show them rather than tell them, which is a theater concept, show them what it is that they're going to get, or show them what it could be, or like even show them the feeling of what it could be,
mm.
it does a lot. It's why, like, you choose specific images, which maybe we'll get into with why you choose the images that you do for when you put them on websites, but also, like, customizing an experience and having, like, I would call them relevancy triggers for, like, the thing about the sailboat, that's really smart. And it takes a little bit extra time, like, if you just wanna turn onto the call and whatever, but it's smart because it shows someone, number 1, that you care. Number 2, it's gonna feel more relevant for them, which is gets warms them up to buy a little bit more.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's a smart process.
That's why thank you. Yeah, and it doesn't work perfectly for everyone, like the sailboat thing, for example. Um, this is a prospect, and his current website has a sail, like a picture of like a clear blue sky and the clear water, and you can see the beautiful horizon. There's a sailboat in the corner. Um, and he was like, what do you think of this as a background image on my homepage? And I was like, he just started chatting. Like, I was like, I think, I said, I'm of two minds, because basically, the answer is always, it depends, right? Like, on the one hand, I do think it's effective. It's explaining part of what you do, but it's also like, you're not a sailing company. So like, it's a little confusing, and you're sort of expecting your users to make this like leap. So anyway, coincidentally, he was like, I just like it. I happen to like sailing. And I was like, oh, yeah. Take me to this beautiful beach any day, literally any day. I'll go
Yes.
to the beach. So it was just like a little aside. But then when I went to go build the thing, I was like, oh, duh. Like, that's the picture I'm going to put here. Um, for someone else, she like told me she's a Swiftie. So I made sure that like when I was looking for that slide for that person, I found like a picture of Taylor drinking a drink, kicked out, beat kicked out. or like laying in a pool or whatever. Someone else told me they were about to go to Hawaii. So I was like, oh, I have a picture of that person like floating on a pool boat, like in the, you know what I mean? Like just like
Yeah.
little cues that I am able to be like, and this will be you floating on this pool float, just like you said you would be, like chilling while I do all the work to build your beautiful new
I was
website.
just gonna say that'd be funny if you did like a split screen with like them on one side with like the chill, whatever, and you like furiously typing away at your computer with like smoke coming out of behind you.
Yeah.
The difference?
And that's the difference. That's what I do in my free time. That's
Doing
funny.
all the things.
Yeah.
This is a good segue into like what is actually your design framework and what can the people take away from like things that they can keep in mind around so that they don't have the 20 and so that they're not trying to sell to the 20, 30-year-olds and get the grandmas
Yes.
calling them.
Yes. Okay. Great. Great question. So, I would use my web design framework. I call it the four alities framework. The four alities are visuality, functionality, personality, and propositionality. Okay. Visuality is obviously what makes your site look pretty. And a lot of people think that that's like all that goes into web design. They're like, okay, well, here's someone said to me recently, I made like an ugly version and now I want to upgrade it. And I'm like, okay, well, that's only the tip of the iceberg of what I do. The visuality is very small part, obviously very important, but like
Yeah.
very small part, visuality.
It's the thing that people think of when they think, oh, I want a website redesign. Like they just want it to look nice, but it's like the tip of the iceberg to be cliche
Yes.
about it.
Yeah, 100%. It's not even like they're not even thinking about like the fact that there's a reason that there's two calls to action at the like above the fold, for example. Like that's actually more of a layer of functionality, not visuality. But anyway, whatever. That's like it. Obviously,
Can you explain why that is?
yeah. Well, first of all, there's always a call to action in your top nav. It needs to be there all the time for the entire time that anyone is scrolling your website. We want them to be able to see that big loud call to action right in the corner. And then it's also a best practice to have a big loud call to action like on the what's above the fold on the website, which is the part that you see right when you land on it. Um, in general, web users are not paying attention. So we want to be like hit them over the head obvious with the thing we want them to do, which is give you money. We want the website is a way to get people to give you money. And that does not necessarily mean that you have to sell t-shirts or whatever on your website, but it means that like we want them to book a call with you. We want them to give you your email address, whatever it is you need in order to get them to give you money. We want them to take that action on your website. So hit them over the head obvious with the calls to action. Obviously, also, when it comes to visuality, we want the word to be clear and legible. I'm checking the contrast ratios so that they're web accessible, but I'm also like making sure that your images are crisp they're at the right pixel size and the right resolution so that they show up and look really stunning no matter what screen size is being used. So that's visuality. And again, like making sure it has hot pink because I really like hot pink. Like that's great. Like I'm here for hot pink also. But
Me.
like,
Mhm.
yeah, but like where and why are we using hot pink? If the whole website's hot pink, then you're gonna lose the pop of the hot pink. So visuality is also about sort of like a visual balance of all of the things that you're trying to do, regardless of why you're trying to do them. Okay, so that's visuality. Next is functionality. Specifically, when I talk about functionality, there's two like important buckets. The first is that it needs to be really easy for your users to use. So it really needs to be easy for web users to give you money. And then second, it needs to be easy for you to maintain and edit yourself. This is why I like decided to go deep in Squarespace and sort of like get rid of all of my WordPress offerings because I want my clients to be able to manage and maintain their own website after I build it for them. So that's functionality. And that's a whole world of things we could continue talking about in the functionality realm, but like, let's just leave it at that and move on. Visuality, functionality, personality. Obviously, this is the most fun. So in personality, I want to make sure that you are not like forgettable on your website, right? Like every lawyer looks the same. But if you're like a really actually genuine guy who helps a lot of different people in a lot of different capacities, I want to make sure that your website makes you look like a real human in a way that makes you more relatable than like a stodgy firm. So like I want you to still be professional, but I want to be relatable. And personality is really where I think I bring my like bread and butter is really in is blending like two seemingly contradictory personality traits into one visual representation. So like my website, for example, I am like loud, bubbly, and fun, and like super experienced and serious about what I do at the same time. And sort of like threading the needle between those two things is my specialty. So that's personality, right? And then the last one is propositionality. Propositionality is what makes you unique in your industry. So what's your value proposition? I want to make sure that is like front and center. All again, like hit them over the head, obvious on your website that that's what you like. That's what you're doing here. That makes you different from everyone else. It's why people want to work with you. Um, yeah, I mean, jumping back, like thinking about my current client, their proposition is that their value proposition is that they do basically like management training, and they do it very differently than um, other people doing the same work. They do a lot of like, they're much more fun, they're much more engaging, they're encouraging of vulnerability and real human connection, and they do their trainings in cohorts. So like you must like work as a team in order to achieve these end goals of being better leaders for your team that's like beneath you at work. So yeah, their visuals show that right off the bat. You can't miss it. Like you can't miss it. They're fun. They're fun and people focused. Like that's the whole website looks like that. Um, Lots of pictures of smiling people, people happy at work, people connecting over conversation, tough conversations and fun conversations, and like coffee conversations and like computer conversations, like having the courage to give us what's the word, like a presentation at a whiteboard in front of a room full of people, but also then like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's
Yeah.
so much that I'm blending in there. Um, so yeah, that's the four alities. And I achieve those four alities on a website by using the 4P web design process, which we don't have to go into, but that's sort of how I talk about it when I'm talking to
Yeah.
people.
I do want to talk about it, but I want to talk about some of these first. If we can. That sounded very bossy.
Great. I love it.
Later. Don't get ahead of yourself, Rachel. Because I mean, I think what you're saying, like imagery, I think is so important. And
Mhm.
I know, like I don't really design websites anymore. I have in the past, but like I was doing some website work just through my agency naturally because I was doing sales pages and like opt-in
Yeah.
pages. And I would get people who were like, here's my brand imagery, and I want you to use like these photos of me. And I'd be like, but none of these work.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like, you don't, can we just talk about like, you don't necessarily want, no one really cares about you, first of
Yes.
all. They do, like, even if you're a personal brand, they care about you in that they are interested in hiring you. But if you don't have imagery that sort of shows the desired outcome, and ideally, but also, or something that shows like what you want people to feel when they land on your website, or how that you want them to feel about your business, like it doesn't do much for you, right?
Hmm. Yeah. 100%. 100%. And or I like to think about also like how it feels and looks during the process of working together. Like when like I'm thinking a lot about
Mhm.
like when I say personality, sometimes I really mean like organizational culture or like working style. So those are things I'm also trying to pick pictures of. And I think an interesting part of my work is that a lot sometimes it does come down to like marketing coaching or even business coaching where I'm like, these pictures aren't good enough. I can't use them. Like, and for some people, I say like, I need you to get me, either I need you to get me different images if you're really dead set on using something that looks like this, or like, I'm going to put together a collection of stock photos and you can tell me if they're right or wrong and we can tweak it together. Or like, I'm going to tell you what you need to do this weekend. Just take an iPhone and you're going to get your wife to take some pictures of you. And like, here's what exactly what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And I get like so specific with them. Like, I'm like, it must be in a naturally lit room, but no
Mhm.
direct sunlight. I say, like, I want you to stand next to the window. Your wife is across from the window. Like, I like explain everything. Right. And I'm like, I want to have a picture of you for a headshot. I need a picture that's like from here up, like and then I want one that's further away and I want one from the side. Like, I like get, if I really need if I really need something and they're not able, like they're not giving it to me right away, then that's the level of detail that I'm going into with these clients because I don't want them to have a bad package. That's also why my starting rate is 8,500 because like if that's what you need, that's the level that we're taking this to.
I just food for thought. I know other people who do, which I only know show it designers who do this, but I assume there would be some type of parallel here, is the show it designers that I know who do like what you're talking about is creative direction.
Yeah.
It almost doubles the package price.
Yeah. As it should, because it's extremely time consuming
And it's like really high level strategy work. Like you wouldn't say like, I'm going to tell you how to like show up and take pictures, but it's like, it's what people emotionally respond to.
people are so, and the thing is like not every client needs that,
Yeah.
but like sometimes they do and they didn't know until they get into it that that's what they needed. And so like, yeah, you're right. It is why my packages are expensive because like I can guarantee that your neighbor's cousin down the street who just started doing web design is like not doing that.
Yeah. I love that. I also didn't know that. That's great.
Right, there you go. That's how I do it.
On along those lines, because I'm really interested in this from like why people respond and like human behavior in general is interesting to me. So like trying to reverse engineer human behavior for something that is like tech is so kind of dry or it can be dry. So like how you reverse engineer to get someone to want to take an action on something, like how does that correspond visually or like which one of the alities gets sort of looped in to visuality on that because there are so many things like just to get someone to keep scrolling, it's not just what it looks like.
Yeah. It needs to be like balanced and engaging. And in some cases there needs to be like some movement on the page, I find. So like um usually my clients veto this by the time it gets to publishing. So like I almost none of my websites that are like in my portfolio have this function, but I always build it with it and then have to peel it back. But having like scrolling text or like a rotating image if it's irrelevant, some images don't look good when they're rotating, but like just something that's sort of enticing people to like stay a little longer. Um,
Mhm.
I also just think like in general, the whole page needs to have a flow to it. Um, so that when you look at the whole thing, like as you're scrolling through each section, like one section leads nicely into the other. People will just the general data says that people are more likely to scroll than click. So like that's interesting. But I find that the mixture of compelling language and compelling but like somewhat moving via images will keep people around for longer. But that's like unique to each different audience too. Like I would have to look at the analytics on a website to tell you like what's working and what's not, as opposed to like what I think would be working.
Yeah. I love moving images on websites. I think it's really engaging. Me personally, I don't know that everyone would feel that way, but it's also like if it slows the website down is no bueno.
Well, yeah, of course. So that's also something you have to sort of navigate. Like I really like a GIF, but like only like a 4 slide GIF. So it's
Mm.
it's moving, but it's pretty subtle. And also like, listen, I'm thinking in particular, I worked with a forest therapy guide recently, and for her
You say
website, I did
forest therapy?
a forest therapy guide. Yes,
Wow.
yeah, very
That
interesting.
sounds very hippie.
It was so. I was expecting it to be so hippie, but it's actually like super sciency, and it was like not that woo at all, which is like not what I was
Interest
expecting. But but for that website, I did have a 4 slide GIF and I wanted it to rotate really slowly. So there was some movement, but it wasn't like fast paced because like, first of all, nature is always moving, but also nature's never fast paced. So like I wanted to make sure that I was hitting both of those things.
Mm,
For someone else, if their work is fast paced or they talk really fast or they're more of that movement is different. Or also like having scrolling text that's like wavy versus having scrolling text that's straight. Um, I don't know. I think a lot about all those elements and what messages are they sending? Not just like, oh, this is some scrolling text, but like, why are we using scrolling text? And does it speak to the audience that's going to be looking at this website or no?
yeah, interesting. I would love to hear about the 4 Ps and potentially also weaving them into, like, how you use them in your sales proposal so that people get some sense of, like, maybe how they could do something with their own sales calls if they have a process. What's that look like?
The 4 Ps are prep, put it together, polish, and publish. And every single project that I do goes through all 4 of the Ps. The way it works on my calls is that I just like explain what that looks like and how it works. Prep is where we do all the content, all the visuals, we get it ready in advance. Put it together is like the sprint portion. Polish, obviously, we're checking the functionality, submitting final feedback, SEO, web accessibility, all the like nitty gritty stuff. And then publish is where I lead a Squarespace training call, transfer ownership to you, and then we celebrate that your site has launched. Woohoo! So, um,
Wahoo!
that's how that works. And then on my calls, my initial call, I'm explaining that process to say, here's how it's going to work when we work together. This is the exact steps I'm going to walk you through and what we're going to do in each step. And then they're like, oh, great. Okay, cool. And then I have like a little like quick notes section where I tell them like basically the boundaries for the project. And then after that, I'm like, all right, well, do you have any questions? And then when I say like sort of high level, like, yeah, at that point, I'm either saying like, I expect this to be a $3,600 website and I turn it around in a week, or I'm saying, I would love to put together a custom proposal for the package that we just discussed. Let's pick a time to meet next week so I can present something to you and we can talk more about pricing and options. Um, so yeah, that's how that looks. Does that answer your question? Because
Yeah.
I'm seeing now that what I should be doing is then on that follow-up call, I should be going through the 4 alities and explaining how I'm going to do the 4 alities with the website that they talked about. And then I can like run through the 4 Ps because we already did that. I'll just say like the 4 Ps are here. We're going to do this. I updated these 2, but you could read through it in your free time. So it's like not that exciting. And we basically already reviewed it. And then I can say like, okay, and that's $10,000 package.
Yeah. But I think yes, yes, but it's also, um, like, understanding how to customize like what I said in the beginning, if selling is understanding what someone wants, marketing
Mhm,
is helping them feel something about it,
mhm,
that understanding what someone wants, like, that's customizing their experience, understanding how to shape a conversation, and then understanding what to pitch them based on what they said to you,
mhm.
which is why I'm so adamant that, like, in the beginning, if you have a gazillion different packages, you don't understand how to listen. You're just like, "Oh, I'm just gonna pitch the most expensive." It's not necessarily the best move. But anyway.
Yeah, it's not going to work. And for a lot of these people, even for the lower ticket people, like a lot of them are just curious. Like they didn't realize that SEO research costs extra, or they don't really understand what goes into building a new logo. So all of them are like, well, I'd be curious to know how much that costs. And then suddenly I'm like, well, I can't like get quotes from my colleagues to ask for like, if you're like not serious about it. So I can give them like a ballpark, and I usually do. And then I put it together and I say, this is what I would expect. If this is kind of what you're like, for someone I just recently did this, I said, I usually would expect it to be in this ballpark. What are you thinking? Is that something you want or no? And he was like, oh,
Yeah.
probably not at this time. And I'm like, okay, great. Cause like, I'm not going to go source someone for this project. If you're like, no, I was just curious. Like that's just curious versus like how much does it actually cost? It's a little bit different. Um, yeah.
I like it. Is there anything of all this that we did not touch on that you think we needed to?
No, this is so fun. It came with a side of coaching. I didn't realize that I was going to get that. Fun fact.
I can't
I gotta fix something.
I can't help myself.
I'm not. I feel like there's always something to be improved when you're running a business. And like if you're not ready for that, then maybe you shouldn't be running a business. It's always
There's
something to be
always
improved.
there is always something that can be improved. I'm judging this weekend at a music competition
Mhm.
and random things in my life. And one of the things that I'm like, there's always like you could have the greatest singer in the world standing in front of you, and I will always be like, just constructive feedback.
Yeah.
Really freaks people out. There's always something that,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm not very good at that when it comes to selling the client on like I'm not very good at saying like, "Oh, you really need a new brand." Like, I don't wanna offend anyone. So, like, I have to be careful because if they're like, "Oh, I really like this logo." But the logo they were showing me actually was not great, at all. It had, like, 2 overlapping images, so it was, like, sort of hard to read in some ways, and the
um,
2 overlapping images were separate contrasted colors, so one of them was, like, a light green and one was a dark blue. So that means that, like, the light green part isn't visible on a white background, and the dark blue part's not visible on a dark background, and it was, like, just not a good logo for those 2 really big reasons. But the person was like, I had this great girl on my team. She built me this awesome logo. I'm like not necessarily ready to like ditch the logo. So I can't be like, I think you need to ditch the logo. Um, and by the way, it's going to cost an additional $3,000 for you to ditch the logo. Like no one wants, like, you know what I mean? Like that's a different, it's
yeah.
a tough, it's tough.
Well, I mean, I know people who like if you are gonna go into their package with them, they must redo everything. And I personally find that off-putting. Um, like, I know that everything about me personally, my brand is not perfect. Like, when I look at it, I'm like, I would have a lot of critique with what I I put out for myself if I were to go but, like, it's fine, but there are certain elements of it that, like, I would not be willing to let go of,
Yep.
and seeing things like, "You must let us redesign your color palette. You must let us redesign" like, it has to be a full like, that would be an instant that
Mm-mm.
I'm not gonna work with you. So it's a both and.
Yeah. I mean, and I would never do that also. Cause again, like I'm working with small business owners, like, they don't always have 10 to $15,000 to do the whole thing right in one like, all in one sitting. So,
Yeah.
like, I have to be understanding of, like, we could and probably should redo your visual brand, but, like, that doesn't necessarily have to happen right now. It could happen later. For right
Yeah.
now, we can just take this new story, this new content that you've built and put it on the website and, like, sort of just, like, work with what you got. Like, in a year, we can revisit. You wanna update the brand, we'll update the brand, and then we'll sort of, like, restructure the website to match.
Yeah.
It's not the ideal way to do it, but, like, that's how it works when you're running you're running a business. It's not gonna be perfect. What's the minimum viable product that you
You
need for
said in
this
the
exact
beginning,
moment?
sustainability is flexibility.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Amazing. Well, to really wrap this up, what the question that I used to ask that I want to come back to is let's fast forward to the very end of your business. Do you know what I'm gonna ask you?
No.
Do you know this question? Okay. So fast forward to the very, very end of your business. If it's because you're retiring or because you've sold it to someone or whatever the happy reason, it's a happy time. What are the 3 things you hope it will have given you?
Freedom, like, schedule freedom and, like, money freedom, like, to have enough money to be able to
Yeah.
make choices, like, the right choices, and also fun. Like, I want it to have been a good time building this thing. Yeah,
Yeah. The
freedom and
3
fun.
Fs.
Yeah, I love it.
I love it. Well, where can people find you? What do you have for the people?
Yeah, I'm, obviously on Instagram and LinkedIn. Please find me on Instagram, Mrs. Brightside, but I spell it SEID like my name. Um, and yeah, I would love to talk to anyone who's thinking about building a new website or has questions about building a new website. I have offerings that are like as small as like a one-time sort of like working session to go through a list of things you want to get off your plate. All the way up to like obviously a full custom redesign, rebrand, whole shebang. So if anyone is anywhere in between on that scale, I would be more than happy to book a coffee date, chat more, tell you more about my work, hear more about yours, and see if there's anything I can do to help.
Amazing. Well, I'll link all the things below, and this was fun to chat
It
about.
was so fun.
I know. To get to know you better was fun.
Yeah, I can't believe you didn't know my whole backstory. Wow, amazing.
I feel like I knew like pieces here and there, but definitely not the whole.
Uh,
Like I think I knew you went to college in Boston,
Right.
but not and like that you. Yeah, but most of it no. So that's fun.
Good.
Love it. All right. Well, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.